Folks, showing 4:30, so we're going to try to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the December 11th, 2024 Bar Large meeting in the public meeting room at 2 George Street. My name is Trey Watkins, and I'm serving as the chairman this afternoon. The other board members that will be present this afternoon include Jay White. However, Jay is recusing himself on items B1 and B3. We have Luda Sopchuk, James Metters, Seton Brown, who's recusing on item B3, and Joel Trantham, who is here serving as an alternate and replacing them on items B1 and B3. He'll also stay with us for item B2. City staff present are BD Wortham Galvin, city architect, Lawrence Courtney, staff architect, and Brad Thomas, the staff architectural planner. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will typically control the slide presentation. That includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name when speaking. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston public meeting channel on YouTube. And your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting will be as follows. We will start with an introduction or overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. That is then followed by applicant presentation. This presentation is limited to 10 minutes or is determined by the chair and with any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, be it owners, developers, designers, consultants, etc., are asked to speak at this portion rather than during the public comment. Next will be the public comment section. All applications are part of a public meeting. Written public comments were due by noon the day prior to the meeting, and any received comments have been transmitted to and considered by the board members. Written comments will not be read aloud during the meeting unless requested by a member of the board and with permission by the chair. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item at this time is requested to state their name, their address for the record, and to be reminded there is a 2-minute time limit for these remarks unless extended by the chair. The applicant does not respond to comments made during the public comment portion. The next section will be the city staff comments and recommendations. That's followed by the applicant response or clarification to the public comments and city staff comments and recommendations. This response has a 5-minute time limit, and the applicant does not have to use the applicant response period if they do not feel it is necessary. That will be followed by our board discussion and vote. The applicant presentation is over and the public comment is closed. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. The chair shall reread a motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. Once the motion is in proper order and seconded, each member when voting should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The results will be posted on the city website, which can be found at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. There are no items that have been withdrawn or deferred. We had public comment via letter submitted for 657 King Street from Cannonboro Elliott Borough Neighborhood Association. Finally, as a reminder, please turn off all cell phones or other potentially disrupted devices. Please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, and light coverage, as well as livability, department concerns are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. With that, I will we'll move into approval of the minutes. Those were circulated amongst the board members. Do I have a motion to approve those? Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Subcheck. So we have a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters? Yay in favor. Ms. Subcheck?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Trantham?
Yay in favor.
And I'm also yay in favor. All right, great. Moving into the applications then. Item number 1 is 52 Line Street. Tell us about that.
I know.
Nope, sorry.
Item number 1, Earhart.
I think you have.
These are the last meeting minutes.
Yeah.
You got today's agenda? That would be helpful. The reason one of our members has recused himself. All right, number one is 2 Earnhardt Drive. Thank you.
This particular property is not rated, we believe circa 1960s in the Old City District. And they're requesting full demolition of the psych annex facility at the corner. If we can move to the next slide, we'll just orient everyone in Google Maps where we're talking about, and we're ready for applicant presentation.
Listen to liquor working.
You just never know.
All right, so this is 102 Dowdy or 2 Earhart, depending upon your disposition. This building we think was built around 1961, based off of newspaper articles. And I should identify myself for the record, the J. White Wheel of Architecture. This building was purchased by MUC in the 1970s. It had been built by a group of doctors here in Charleston to be used as a dental office. And there are some charming attributes to the exterior, but our argument here is that the context in which this building was built has changed radically, and it no longer contributes to that context. People have asked what was here before this building, and the answer is the Ashley River, as evidenced by the sandboards. Actually, few of the sandboards you can capture this. The siding of this building, you can see it in the yellow square there, is at its western end of the greenway. And MUSC's intention is probably just to expand the maintenance space once this building is moved. It is no longer serving any function for them. We also researched the cultural history of the building, make sure there wasn't anything to be found there, and there's really not. Just one humorous circa 1962 newspaper ad where the dentistry was looking for an attractive, mature woman to serve as a bookkeeper. That's it, and I'll answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? All right. Public comment. All right, city staff, comments and recommendations, please.
Sure. The ordinance offers criteria for reviewing demolition requests in the Old City District, asking the BAR to consider, among other things, the historic, architectural, and aesthetic features of the structure, the nature and character of the surrounding area, the historic or cultural important use of such structure, and the importance to the city. Based on historical newspaper research, staff believe the building dates from 1961. While modest in nature, the building is one of the few mid-century structures remaining downtown. Applicant and staff research found no cultural significance associated with the structure. The structure's importance to the city would only be defined by its modernist aesthetics, as its relationship with the surrounding area and cultural use do not convey significance to the city of Charleston. Staff recommendation is that we do not oppose demolition.
Thank you. Any board discussion?
Or applicant.
I'm sorry, Mr. White, do you have any response?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Moving into board discussion.
I want to apologize to y'all for not coming on Tuesday morning to review the project with you, but I did go on my own. And independently, I verified for myself some of the stuff that Jay said. And with that in mind, if there are no other comments from the board, I will move for approval of demolition.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So we have a motion to approve demolition by Mr. Metters, a second by Mr. Brown. Brown, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metter,
Yay.
Ms. Sopchuk,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Trantham.
Yay in
I'm
favor.
also yay in favor. All right. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is 81 Mary Street. It is a Category 2 building circa 1848 in the Old and Historic District, and they are requesting conceptual approval of exterior renovations. We'll pull up the location, and then we'll give the applicant time to finish setting up before their presentation.
Great.
Everyone see this?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
All right, my name is Tom Duzan. I'm with Redline Design Group, architects in Charlotte, North Carolina. The ownership representative here is Dave Byron, who owns Best Impressions Caterers. This project is going to be an event center for weddings and such. It's situated on 81 Marriott. Also, the other end of it is the music farm, if you guys are familiar with that. This is the old Charleston School of Law building. It has been kind of vacant and dilapidated for a little bit. Mr. Byron is going to come in and rejuvenate the building, refresh it, clear out a lot of the interior maze that's been created in there, take out all of the mezzanines, create a whole new bathroom structure, and then have two open large areas and really expose all of the old bow trusses that were so beautifully built back in the day. This building dates back to a couple different eras, but 1847 and 1844, I believe. It was built in a couple sections. It was along an old railway. There was I think a cotton distribution area on the other side of the building. And so this building has a current rail line down the alleyway. I'm sure you're familiar with all of it. But it's just a very, very picturesque, beautiful building. And Mr. Byron is gonna really take it up to another level. He's gonna refresh the exterior, add some embellishments to address the entrance on the corner there, introduce some wrought iron, really dress up the entries. The current storefronts are kind of old, kind of an 80s glass and wood door that didn't really fit with the motif. The color on the building currently on some of the windows is kind of a faded green, black green, Charleston green. We're going to kind of take that to a newer, fresher color, a little darker. We're going to paint the exterior handrails, really refresh the front stairs, resurface the entire front stair area there that you have in front of you on the drawings, and just basically rejuvenate the whole space. The side yard is going to have, there's a current chiller on the side yard. We're going to expand that area and really refresh that whole kind of dingy alley that's down through there. So we're going to replant some plantings and rescreen a chiller yard there and kind of dress that whole side up as well. As you can see from this front rendering, we're going to introduce some lighting on that facade and refresh the current handrail that's on the left of that rendering, and then introduce wrought iron railings on the three elements that you see there. There will be some minimal signage that will meet all your criteria as well. Any questions on the general overview? And I believe the permitting has been processed. I think we've gone through the permitting from the city side, and we're approved on everything. Get to So this is kind of some of the historical photos, and from this photo here, you can tell that the building was somewhat unadorned at a certain point, and then there was some facade treatment added to that building, which is what you have currently. We don't propose to change anything. We just want to renovate it, rejuvenate it, and bring it back up. Some of the side yards, this is the screening that we were talking about. Some of these windows will be introduced with doors for egress on that side. So we will take one or two of the sills and cut that down and introduce a nice exit and entry door. Nothing on this facade will change. This is the corner that we're going to kind of refresh. And we're also going to introduce, and you have some of the materials here, repaint this whole whitewash kind of wainscot on here, and repaint a lot of the soffits and trims, and then repaint all of the surfaces of the windows. And so we're basically just bringing it back up to its standards. Here's some of the, I thought it was just kind of some interesting studies here of the cotton yard and some rail yards that were right next to us. It's an incredible building. It's a beautiful space inside. I don't know if you guys have been inside it. It's absolutely gorgeous.
So you want to point it at the laptop, because the laptop is where the receiver for the remote is. You may have to go ahead and forward for him.
Okay.
Just let Lauren, oh, it's working, okay.
Okay, here are some of the exterior elevations, and in locations like this, we'll take the sill down and introduce a new door. This is the side alley with the chiller yard and whatnot. That's what we'll be addressing on that side. Trying to get to the.
Remember, you have to point it at the laptop.
Okay. Yeah. Here we go. Okay. So as you can see on this board here, we've introduced some lanterns on the side. These will be gas lanterns on the front facade. So just right on the corner there and along there's a raised old dock kind of level area, and we wanted to introduce a couple of those down that area. That will be also used as a expansion of the indoor area to kind of mingle on the veranda. And so we wanted to have some lighting along there and kind of dress this whole side up. And you can see this raised dock here. So we'll have a couple of these kind of lanterns along there, and they're very period. Then we'll also have 2 accent lights at the doors. We're also talking about introducing a decorative Rosetta type piece that mimics the Rosetta on the front facade. That's just kind of accenting and bringing that detail through to kind of dress up. These are they're nice. This setup is nice, but it just lacks a little detail. So we're trying to give a little bit of Charleston detail to it. And they won't be very prominent. They'll just be a kind of a background detail. So just wanted to get your opinion on that. Here's some of the colors that we're talking about. So the new entry doors will be this color. And then the wrought iron will be in this kind of detail. The material that we're proposing on the stairs to rewrap, right now it's kind of a slate, and it's got some peeling and pop marks and whatnot. So we want to reskin that with a really nice tile that's it's actually a Decton material. So it's basically impenetrable, but it mimics the same stone that's out there. So that's going to be nice. So it won't chip or break or come apart. So that's the material that you'll have on the front stairs. And that pretty much concludes the scope.
Great, thank you so much. Questions from the board?
I have actually a question to staff.
Sure.
The years and years before, we were not, seems to be allowed the gas lanterns.
Was a rule made by a city architect, but is not an official ordinance or a policy. It was just somebody's very strong opinion. But I've done the research and it does not exist as something that is
All right, so
official.
back to that
Yeah.
now. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Miller.
sheet A 6.0. Note 12. It's the vent hoods that are up on the roof. I'm sure the size was on there of those vent hoods, but I just couldn't find it. How big are those vent hoods?
The vent hoods, I couldn't tell you, but they're probably
Something like that.
24-inch diameter.
So would you have a conversation with BD and the city about, is there some way you can just own it and you put it up there and that might be the right thing? Or is there something that could be installed around that would, that might be worse than just putting it up there? I don't know, but could you have a conversation about that? And I think there's 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's at least two, maybe three.
Okay. And one of the elevations you didn't show it, but the others did, and then the next one is, sheet 8.2, but 8.2, but it shows up on several sheets where you're talking about the handrail on the outside. This is all gonna be raw rail, which is great. But it says that the final choice on that would be between the architect and the owner. I just wanna make sure that the city
Yeah.
gets tied in on that also.
Is that, the final details, is that something we would present for?
If, whenever, I anticipate that this may go to, just for y'all's
Yeah,
review.
but for Tom, for your clarification, it could go back to the board or it could go to city staff depending on the board motion tonight. But it is reviewed by someone, whether it's that the board requires to look at those details or whether it's final review by staff.
And on the plan, the
Yeah.
note says something like, the final decision will be made by the owner.
Yeah, and so
architect.
that's the
I
key is that
just-
it's
yeah, I'm
actually,
just trying to tie it.
we're part of that final decision.
Yes,
Yeah.
it has been approved by the owner as drawn. If it deviates from that, we would definitely want to take that back through either staff or PAR.
Yeah.
Sure.
I thought it looked fine, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to add that.
Yeah, the language of that is it would have to come either before the board or city staff, depending on what the motion is tonight.
For the sake of this meeting, can we assume that it's as designed and
Yes.
move forward with that?
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Metters. Yeah, Mr. Crane.
I don't know that I had.
Did you
Is
have
it
a-
question time?
Yeah, it's just a question,
No, I
yeah.
don't have a question.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. All right. No other questions? Thank you. I will move them. Thank you for the presentation. We'll move into public comment. And you can go ahead and have a seat for now. Any public comment? Hearing none. All right, city staff comments and recommendations.
Sure. 81 Mary Street is rated a category 2 building and therefore must go before the board. Staff support the repair and renovation changes to the building to include the custom wrought iron handrails, the decorative rosettes added to the exterior windows, new wood frame storefront windows matching existing, and the gas wall sconces. And staff have no conditions for approval. And our recommendation is conceptual approval with board comments and final review by staff.
Thank you. Anything else you would like to add? Any response to those comments? All right, we'll move into board discussion then.
PD, as they look at some of the coatings on the outside of the building, that'll be.
Yes.
Yeah, like that.
Yep, that would be part of our final review if it was final review by staff.
That's great.
Okay. It's like you had the same thing.
Yeah, no, that was a similar question that I had as that went forward. If the board decides to release this, then, and there's no issue with the tile material being some type of changing from a natural stone to something more of a synthetic. The staff didn't have any questions about that. as you
No,
looked
but
at it.
the board certainly can and condition it if they would like to.
I was gonna ask a question. How do you, and I know you made a note of the hood extension as it went above the building, which seemed to be honestly the largest change on the exterior. The majority of it was reverting back to what is there. And you referenced a shroud or something that may go around it. What was your feeling about kind of it as it's presented versus allowing staff to kind of make that?
I'm hoping that, that will be studied by staff and an option for shrouding that would be presented,
Yes.
which may lead to a good hearty discussion, that may lead to a good outcome by concealing it, but maybe not. And that's one of, that was my feeling,
Yeah.
louvered, it would have to be louvered. of
Yes,
course, and-
absolutely.
And enough clearance around it, but at some point in time, it becomes so large,
Yeah.
it's boxing, yeah, so.
Yeah, that would
You-
certainly be part of our discussions. But again, if the board is more comfortable with the final review coming back to the board, we are
Yeah.
comfortable with that as well.
I'm not, I'm fine if it goes to the staff for the final review. yeah.
Okay,
I want to go back to this steps and tile. I don't think tile is appropriate to this building. I think the stone needs to be reintroduced, so it needs to be repaired. This building deserves that.
I agree.
I didn't ask that, but all this new metal work. I don't know if it's again appropriate for this building because it's a warehouse and has a simple openings and things like that. And I don't particularly understand where's the inspiration comes from. But that's me. So if anyone has the same issue or not,
I mean, to me, Ludo looks like the inspiration is probably coming from what they plan to put inside. I mean, Music Farm has never been known for chandeliers, but in the plans it shows one.
yeah,
So it doesn't, I agree with you in that it doesn't reflect the context of the building as it currently is. But that's where I think the inspiration is probably coming. I prefer it more simplistic.
I understand, but I'm talking about exterior inspiration.
Yeah,
in-
I agree with you. I don't think
in
there is.
Charleston, period. So, you know, we have that row window. That's only what is really decorative there. I don't know if anyone.
Well, I believe that some of that metalwork was coming off the building, at least around the front door, right? It's coming off the side of the building. Was that?
Was it?
Can you maybe comment on that for us?
On which side?
Well, there was some sort of ornamental piece above the front door that you were talking
There's the
about.
pictures right there.
Yeah, maybe.
We're gonna actually add some of that decorative elements, those rosettes to
Yep.
those arches, on the inside. And so that'll be an added feature. It will not be, wrought iron. The only wrought iron we're adding to the exterior is just the 3 handrails down the staircase.
And those rosettes, did you say that there's one existing?
So the very front, on both ends of the building, there's a large rosette and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And so we're taking the inspiration from that to create those rosettes and then also create the wrought iron.
Gotcha.
So we're trying to pull kind of the scalloping and the curvatures from the details of that and then translate that through to the interior wrought iron and then to the outside. If that makes sense.
Great, thank
And
you.
that's up for interpretation.
Sure. Okay.
And there is a level of ornamentation. When I was looking at it, I did question a little bit of that detail in that handrail. And it is nice that it's not attaching into the building. I can see in some instances where they've just drilled straight into the building versus attaching into the ground. But there is some eave details that are scalloped and, you know, looking at the end of those. And I get your point about the warehouse. That is a logical thought that I think I could be behind too in terms of the direction. But there is a level of ornamentation to this warehouse too.
Yeah, it's kind of adding,
Yeah.
adding the ironwork, or if it's not ironwork, I don't know, but it's overdoing it, this building. It has this simplicity on its own.
Any other discussion, comments from the board? Anyone prepared to make a motion?
So I'm a little bit embarrassed, but I had stuff written out, but I forgot my glasses, so I took a picture of my notes and I'm trying to. zoom in.
Always prepared, Mr. Butters. If I had some, I would loan them to you. So the staff recommendation was conceptual approval with board comments and final review by staff. It sounds like we have some questions about the screening, some questions about the ornamental nature of some of this stuff. You know,
And
it-
steps.
Yeah, the stone steps.
and the stone.
Steps.
On the steps. So I guess the question, if I could ask, you know, that's in the board's comments now. So BD would have that if we did final review by staff? Or would you prefer it to come back to the board so we could see some options?
We don't need to review by board, but if we can add that recommendations in studies.
Yeah, the motion can specifically state that those comments have to be
Is it
met.
a recommendation or a condition?
Either one.
Yeah, I would say a condition.
Yeah, can be a condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
add a comment at this point?
Yeah, but and then we should have, can you go to the podium, because it's just that the microphone is what picks up your, yeah.
So one of our options on the front stairs, if you're not comfortable with the manufactured material, would be to just point up the stone that's there, the slate that's there, and that's very doable. We were just trying to add a little bit of upgrade, and the material that we were proposing also has kind of a nice texture for slip. And so, but we can address the existing stone, which is beautiful. It just needs to be pointed up in detail. So if the staff recommends, or if the board recommends that, we're very willing to do that.
From my standpoint, I have no objection to you doing that. Yeah, I have no objection to repointing what's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that, you don't even need approval for that. It's good.
I mean, how old is this building? Do we have that?
1848.
But I don't,
You know, there's plenty of the steps worn out in the world, and
Sure.
that's the beauty of it. So, yeah,
So it sounds like then we have on the record, these conditions. I don't know if anybody would like to make a motion with the condition, but it could be as simple as, including the steps.
well, the steps are, there's no change to the steps. I mean, I make a motion for approval with board and staff comments, specifically addressing the steps, restudying the ironwork to make sure it's appropriate for the structure, and all other board and staff comments. And final review by staff. Excuse me.
Okay. And the vent HUD study being a part of that motion?
Yes.
All right, let me make sure I've got this. So it's conceptual approval with board and staff comments, further study of the ironwork and the vent HUD with the steps remaining and being repointed.
Fine.
Yeah, right. Do I have a second?
Second thing.
All right. All right, Mr. Brown, how do you do?
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Matters? Ms. Sochar,
yeah, in fact,
Mr. Franklin,
Yeah, in favor.
and I'm also yeah in favor. Thank you so
Very
much.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Yep.
A lot of good memories in the farm. Take- A
Yeah, great memories.
lot of good memories in the music farm.
Yeah.
Take care of it.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah. Well, it's still staying, we're on the other side. So we'll be good neighbors. Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much. Moving to item number 329 King Street.
For item number 329 King Street is a category 4 building dating from the mid 1850s in the Old and Historic District. They are requesting conceptual approval for the replacement of the storefront and stucco work at the entry of the building. And then we're going to show everyone the location. And now we're ready for applicant presentation.
Good evening, my name is Luke Morris with Coast Architects. So our project at 329 King Street is really just a storefront refresh for the facade at the ground floor level. I'll give you an overview real quick. So essentially, it's the Satilli sign on King Street, pretty recognizable. And the scope of work is relegated to the from the soffit of that sign down to the street level. So the existing storefront, probably done in the 80s or maybe 90s. We're just tearing that out, doing new storefront that's kind of squared off, and a little bit of pilaster stucco work on the side just to give some visual interest. To show you what that storefront looks like, or the new proposed storefront. So on the bottom left is the existing storefront. It has a kind of angle, and we're proposing to square it off. We're also making the double doors 6 feet in total width instead of 5 feet for ADA, which is kind of driving the whole project. The ceiling, if you look at the upper two plans, the demolition reflective ceiling plan on the left, there are existing acoustical ceiling tiles essentially that are there in the soffit, we're removing those and we're gonna go with a cementitious ceiling and painting it black to kind of make it disappear, if you will, to the black soffit of the existing sign. We're not proposing to do any work with the existing sign. I think the client wants to fix the problems that it has in the future, but that's not part of the scope of this project. And then kind of to fast forward to, well, this is to give some context. Well, you can see it here with the I went too far. Okay, so this gives some elevation context with the adjacent buildings. And you can kind of see the college corner on the left has wood pilasters. Right now, the existing building is just stucco on either side of the storefront. So we wanted to give it a little bit of relief with some stucco form on the street, and it would be painted the same color as the existing stucco. I know it's kind of small on the screen, but top right is the existing an existing photo, and it's just that light blue color and just flat stucco there. So the new storefront would be black anodized aluminum, which is similar to what it is now, and it again kind of disappears into the storefront or into the sign, if you will, or the opening. So that's pretty much the scope of it.
Thank you. Any questions from the board at this time?
Can you offer some insight into the kind of street level paneling, its configuration and the location of the mullions? Like what was the logic behind the arrangement of those items?
Yeah, so, and again, it's a little small on that screen there, but you can see on the wooden pilasters on the college corner facade that are existing. We're kind of keeping, so like the base of the column, if you will, or the podium of the column, that's the height of that kind of wainscoting profile or height. And then we just take that up to the sign itself. There's a band across the top of the storefront or the whole opening. That's existing flashing made of the same metal as the Satilli sign itself. So that's just existing to remain. And hopefully that explains the reasoning. You can also see on the left pilaster in the recess, there's like a little square, and that's the ADA push button. That's an existing push button for the operable ADA doors. And it's just sitting in that bottom right corner. So it's an attempt to have a spot for it. And so I guess you could say that kind of drives the height of where that is as well.
Is it possible to move that around to the side
Yeah.
face?
I would love to, but it can't be in the path of the door swing for ADA
It
purposes.
looks like, in the path of the door swing.
Right.
Okay, I see. That's the-
So my thoughts exactly, but unfortunately I can't.
You cannot push the door?
So the door could move to the right, but the client wants to continue using that. So currently in its angled position, if I can get this to move.
Well, you can point to that screen too, and they can see what you're.
Well, so imagine this is the exit. Kind of has a minor center.
It does. If we can help you get to a certain spot, we will.
This is fine right now. You can kind of see it over here. So this is just an angled portion back that existing storefront. The client's using it as a kind of presentation space for like, they had a robot dog at some point, and I think like they projected onto a screen with it, which I don't believe they're trying to do now, but it's kind of like a showcase in the storefront. And so that's how they're currently using it. That ground floor is also office space, so they kind of have the interior floor plan set up where the admin is on the left side, so it's immediately in front of where you walk in. So it's more or less just trying to maintain that similar floor plan without doing any changes.
Look, I'm gonna ask it. This is not my specialty, so I don't know about the push buttons and stuff. I mean, there's a distance between the door and where the push button can go. I mean, it has to be within so many feet of the door. I'm trying to say, I mean, there's at least a balance between the panel on the left-hand side, and panel on the right. It's interrupted twice, one by the fire hookup connection, which is the rectangle on the left hand side of the panel, the other one by the push button. I'm just wondering if there's I don't know what the other options are, but
Can you look at the plan again?
I might need your help on that. If you can just go back to the plans. on
it look, those
the-
flat panels are stucco wood.
It's stucco, yeah.
Right there.
Right there, yeah.
Mhm.
And I believe there is a distance requirement. I think it's more in time to get there. But I don't know that code off the top of my head.
Right now, the current location is in compliance with code,
With code.
and changing it would make it non-compliant unless the entire facade design changed.
You can push the storefront a few inches and read that corner. Because it's already has about 6 inches. But I don't know.
I guess
Well-
the concern is if you're sitting in a wheelchair and your wheelchair's in that path, you press the button, it hits
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to mention too,
I almost would
and
put on the storefront frame
And
rather than on the panel.
some consideration with, I believe you're talking about pushing the right side storefront in potentially, is my.
No, that's the door. Yeah,
So where it's currently placed is at the, you can kind of see, this is the interior wall, so it just comes back. So this is at the inside face of where that existing wall is, if that makes sense.
I guess to kind of top the question, will be one of the conditions for us to look at it again, or for staff to look at it again.
I did have one other question just on a different related matter. Glazing, I imagine you're proposing clear glazing for the glasses there, because I think currently the glazing is not transparent. I think there's some film or something behind it that's on there. So are you proposing clear glazing in this or?
So yes, the current glazing actually is clear, and you're right, they did put a film
Yeah,
over
it's
it.
an illegal film.
But they've
So
recently
it's
removed the
not part of
film,
the window.
so you can see that it is clear now.
The existing window is clear.
Oh,
Yeah.
Going back to elevation, if you don't mind, please. Okay, so those panels, they're just panels?
No, so it's stucco formwork. So what we'll probably end up doing to form it is, so originally we were thinking potentially like, could you superimpose on top of the existing stucco? But I was able to put my head above the ACT and the soffit, and those do appear, it appears to be stucco on brick. So we would take the stucco off from the edge of the sign down, and then we would apply new stucco to match the same texture as the existing stucco, but it comes out, I think it's 1/2 inch and then a full inch on the base and the top. And there's a wall section there that, again, is a little hard to see on the screen, but it shows you what those elevations and thicknesses are right there. So the base here comes, I can't read that elevation, I think it's 8 inches or 1 inch. And then it comes in 1/2 inch, and then it comes back to the recessed panel, which would be the existing base of the existing stucco. But it would be new stucco to match the existing stucco, like texture and all, texture and color.
That's what, just to get it on the record, if you could just take a look with Luke when y'all look at this with final details to staff. Again, I don't know about these switch push buttons, but is the one that you can get that you can recess. And so could it be within the panel itself rather than the way it looks, is part on the panel and part of the recess panel? And so maybe you could just at least get it in the recess panel.
And I will say to that point, it looks like it's normal, like 7/8 inch thick stucco. We don't know if it's brick behind it. It's a good possibility there's brick behind it. And if so, by removing it, there's a chance to be able to recess that button at least as much as we can.
And maybe get it into the plane of the recess panel.
Right.
So if we could just take a look, and if, that's the goal. And
Any other questions? All right, thank you. We'll take a public comment at this time. All right, city staff comments and recommendations.
Changes to the storefront are minimal and do not substantially change the appearance of the facade. Staff have no conditions for approval, and we recommend conceptual approval. Board and staff comments and final review by staff.
You've answered a lot of questions for us. Do you have any other response to the comments? All right, board discussion. So, I mean, we talked with him a good bit about the push button study for sure. Are there other items you want to discuss?
I almost want to Google right now. This typical buttons, they're pretty ugly. So I wonder if there's, something can be manufactured that looks more ornate, more, maybe different color and things like that.
I mean, you all can certainly, it's part of the record now, but condition the study of that, and then I'll work with Janet Schumacher from the ADA and the applicant to look at that. But, in the terms of what we can talk about now, we just don't know until we.
But it just.
I know exactly what you're saying,
Itself.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, I think they exist. It's like everything else, like gas lantern or whatever,
Yeah.
these days. So at least try to find something more appropriate for whole image of, marquee and everything else.
Okay,
I do think this is a relatively, in terms of the scale of the overall building, a small section of that building. But we actually just completed a study of all the storefronts in this section of King Street, and it is an area of quite diverse storefronts in terms of whether or not there's paneling on the side, whether or not it's tile, whether or not they're clean openings, how does that relate? And I would be curious to get the board's discussion on kind of, and I think it was related to my question about the arrangement of kind of the curtain wall or storefront as it relates to these panelings, because usually there's an alignment item. There's very few storefronts in this area that I've seen that have three-part glass systems. They're usually more vertical glazing. Even if you look at that elevation, the single storefront in the adjacent building is about the size of the storefront in this. And I do think if you're adding ornamentation or detailing, that the storefront, as much so as the button, should probably relate to that would be question. In the prior one, again, there's a transom over the door that doesn't continue to the window. As this steps forward, they're adding in another bar. I just would be curious what y'all's thoughts are on that
But,
organization.
if you go to or zoom in on the old Gloria, there's the balance that you're talking about. It's terrific. And
Yeah.
So we're working within those confines, and it's been modified and changed, and I'd say we should go back to this, but no, it's not.
Which I would imagine could probably, I would feel confident, probably staff handling some of those reviews. I would imagine as a part of a condition to look at it, that's studied and its relationship is that.
okay.
I agree.
Any other comments on that subject? No, okay.
No,
And just kind of, were you thinking that as a
just
condition?
stucco panels, I keep looking at it and I feel like, in theaters, often enough in all theaters, you would have a display of advertisement, of, performance or something
Just
like
like
that.
this.
So,
Like,
and that's, no, on the sides.
oh, on the sides.
Yeah, and, right, and so it's almost asking for that because configuration, how it's done, so stucco, I don't know. It's just, And I understand you have to recover, but it's almost like asking for wood framing there and things like that. But that's, again, that's discussion, and it's obviously much better what it is now, so.
Okay, thank you so much. So, I mean, I've definitely heard maybe a condition related to restudy for the push button. Are there other conditions? I know we've talked a lot about this.
I think in the context of looking at the Gloria, not, they're not gonna go back to the way that is, but with that in mind as your guide for conversation and communication. It's not gonna look like that, but just have that in mind as you're thinking about your final product.
Great comment. Okay, do we have, is anybody willing to make a motion at this time? The staff recommendation was conceptual approval with board and staff comments and final review by staff. I think we'd like to add the condition related to the push button study.
And.
Yeah, and I would say probably, well, I guess I can try to make a motion, you know, and say, that it would be conceptual approval with final details by staff, including restudy of the push button for accessibility and restudy of the storefront and panels that
You just say storefront panel design.
Yeah.
And we've had enough discussion.
Storefront
That
panel
doesn't have to be. in the
yes,
motion.
I don't want to make it too overly specific.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Trantham. So if I understand, it was a motion for conceptual approval with board and staff comments with a restudy of the push button and the storefront panel design with final review by staff. I get that correct? All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Metters. We move into voting. How do you vote, Mr. Metters?
Yeah, in favor.
Ms. Sochuk,
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Trantham.
Yay in favor?
I'm also yay in favor.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 4, 200 Meeting Street.
And we have a little board switch out. So
We got a change out here.
thank you, Mr. Trantham.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here for those. We will welcome back Mr. White and Mr. Brown.
They'll figure out this.
All right, we're all here and accounted for. So we're moving to 200 Meeting Street.
200 Meeting Street is not rated circa 1991 in the Olden Historic District, and the applicant is requesting conceptual approval of exterior alterations to the 4-story office building and parking garage. We'll give everyone the location, and then we're ready for the applicant.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Jeff Johnston with SMHA Architects, and with me today, I'm Jake Barber and Tyler Flesh with Fourth Line Capital Management, and Sarah Edwards is with my office at SMHA. Tonight, we're going to talk about 200 Meeting Street on the, where's the, which machine, there we go. This history of the site's pretty fascinating. This is the address of the former Charleston Hotel that was there from 1830 to 1960. In 1960, that beautiful building was demolished for the Charleston Motor Lodge, a little less beautiful. But one of the things that I think that's really important about that demolition is it brought about public discussion that we're here today to see. And you know, I think that it encouraged public dialogue, which is awesome. So that building, the Charleston Motor Lodge, was demolished in 1990 for the building that is there today. That's the Bank of America building. It's an office building. It's about 130,000 square feet, and it has a parking garage attached to it. And it nearly stretches that entire block, bound by Meeting Street, Haines Street, Pinckney Street, and Church Street. Doesn't quite get to Church Street. Has about 366 parking spaces and an attached garage. The current building, this is some photographs of it. As you know, it's a postmodern office building. It was built in the, like I said, designed in the 90s. Has a strong base, a middle, and a top. The base is rusticated and it has punched openings along it. The middle also punched openings in the flat wall, and the wall to window ratio increases. And the top is characterized by large windows and smaller pilasters. The meeting street facade, it's on the other side. It has an homage to the Charleston Hotel, only that it's got a number of columns that go, 2 or 3 story columns that march along a portion of the facade. But it's in postmodern style. It's in an arched array, and it has no emphasis, and it's got an overlay, capital and no base. So the details are slightly postmodern. Important for today's conversation is that meeting street component, that arch or the colonnade at the front. The corner elements, mid-block, you can't tell, but on the top left image, you can see mid-block, the roof kind of changes. We'll talk about those. And then parking garage in that bottom right image there. Existing floor plans, moved here, there's some more existing context. Hyman's across the street, Indigo Hotel, Picnic Hotel, and Emmeline. Existing context. Can't tell it, but the office building, there's a shade of green on the left-hand side, and the parking garage is a shade of orange on the right-hand side. What's interesting about this building, maybe buildings of this era, this building was served, again, it's an office building, 4 stories today. The idea in the renovation is to transform that first floor into a retail service mercantile goods, and then the office building would be on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th floor. Right now, you access the building completely from the inside. So it's got 2 internal lobbies. You can walk into a lobby and you go up, which will still need to happen for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. But the idea is really to transform that first floor to where there's a lot more exterior engagement. There's a lot more opportunity for pedestrian interaction, much more so than exists today. Demolition elevations, along with trying to convert the interior space to more exterior interactive space, the ground floor will be punching in a bunch of storefronts openings, and on the upper levels replacing all of the demonstration. Section remains the same. This is the new floor plan, and we'll study these areas more in the vignettes further in the presentation, but this illustrates everything on one sheet. One thing that's important to note are the sidewalk dimensions on Pinckney and on Haynes Street. The sidewalks are 6 feet deep, and then Meeting Street is about 11 feet deep. So in this plan here on the top is the first floor plan. We're chamfering the corners, and later we'll have the conversation to chamfer or not to chamfer. But the idea there was to provide more space to the public realm to really give over some rentable space back to the public realm on those corner there on the page north and page south of that first floor plan. There's also some exterior entries on Haynes Street, which is to the south of that page south of that first floor plan. We're proposing to create 2 new entries on the Haynes Street and 1 new pedestrian entry mid-block along Pinckney Street. Here, no changes to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th plans other than the changing of the windows. These are proposed elevations that we're again going to talk about in greater detail in vignettes. But here you can kind of see very in small letters there on the bottom of the screen. You'll see the alphabet letters A through B, maybe B through F. And those correlate over to these storefront elevations. So the idea on the ground floor level is to again open up that ground floor and introduce larger storefront. So the existing openings have about 8-foot head height. These head heights are more like 14 or 15 feet. And the existing windows are maybe 5 feet wide, and these are 24-ish wide, a variety of sizes. So here's some of the window studies. I like to kind of open up the mind of a designer. And this page here, sheet 21, shows several different mullion patterns, and the far right is the existing mullion pattern. The existing windows are some sort of aluminum or metal window, and the muttons are about 1.25 inches thick. And you can see on the far right that the muttons, there are plenty of them. There's no shortage of muttons. So we were looking at lightening up the building by two things. One, introducing a thinner muttoned window, and two, reducing the muttons. And we looked at several different options here of what mutton pattern felt right for this type of building, and landed on that option H, which is the second from the right. And then you can see it in comparison to the existing mutton pattern. And the thinking there was to get all the windows in a relatively similar proportion. And then also to think through, if you're an occupant on that level, is a mutton bar in your eye level if you're sitting or standing. And this seemed to accomplish just that. Freedom from that visual obstruction. And here we go into some vignettes. So the vignettes are all laid out the same way. We've got the existing condition on the left. We have the new condition or proposal on the right. And I'm going to go clockwise around the building. We're going to start at Pickney and Meeting, and then go rotate around the building, and then change to larger perspectives, and we'll come back around as just an organization. So here you see the existing corner on the far left. And I must say that these same strategies that apply to Haynes Street also apply to Pickney Street. So here we've got the corner on the left-hand side. You can see the rusticated base, and that's the floor plan on the lower left. And this is that chamfered curved corner over here on the right. And you can see the windows, how they'll articulate on the second, third, and fourth floor. And then you'll see the storefront provisions on the lower level. Again, the comparison of the smaller punched openings to the larger storefront openings on the right. And then you'll see in plan that we're dedicating a lot of what could be rentable space to the pedestrian public, dedicating that back to the public. And what that does is provide a little bit more safety for the pedestrians as they're walking across an otherwise tight sidewalk. It also, as we'll kind of look at a future slide, it starts to bring back some of the elements from the historic analog, the Charleston Hotel, where a lot of that front facade was given to the public realm. So along with these storefront entries, some of the things you'll see is the canopies being added to the facade, and the canopies will help provide some depth and shadow to a otherwise imposing elevation. If you've ever walked on Haynes Street particularly, it's one of those streets you just want to keep going and going and going. You want to get off that street. And one of the project goals here is to make that a street that you want to engage with by providing entries to. We did some studies. And this is actually being presented in kind of reverse study. We landed on the curved chamfer, but studied a 45-degree chamfer, and studied no chamfer. But our preference is the first option, that's the curved chamfer, and thinking that curved chamfer kind of picks up on the radius of Meeting Street that we'll look at in a second. And also picks up on the opportunity to use some of the postmodern elements, thinking that this point right here could be a column that's either of the design philosophy of the Meeting Street columns, or it could be the pilaster of the fourth floor. Either way, it's trying to pick up the design strategies that's already in place.
Mr. Johnson, sorry to interrupt you there. We've hit our first 10 minutes. Do you like some additional time, or?
Yeah, if you don't mind. I'll be quicker.
Okay.
Thank you. This is the Meeting Street facade. This is the existing as it stands today. And the proposal is to remove that lower first floor wall and make it more piers again, like the historic analog that's in the bottom right corner. You can see the columns there. The idea is that we express the columns in between the columns. We've got more glass just to open up more light, again, to have more interaction between inside and outside of the building. We studied a smooth version of the same rather than the rusticated. We prefer the rusticated. Then a mid-block moment, which canopies and more entries. Parking garage, we propose to punch it is now a window, we want to punch a door into that so we can get access into the parking garage. And then at the vehicular garage entry, we want to add a canopy and a blade sign there. And then working in reverse, and I appreciate your time extension. Working in reverse here, this is the vehicular entry with a canopy. Canopies would be steel framed, steel aluminum wrapped. All the other existing elements would be painted, so that's louvers that would be painted. And there's a metal grating on the first floor that would be graded or painted as well. That's that pedestrian entry as we go back to the building. Mid-block moment, new entries and new canopy. Again, 2 on Hayne, 1 on Pickney. And the corner element, the Meeting Street facade, the opposing corner on Pickney Street, and then a bird's eye perspective. And that is it. And thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Are there questions from the board at this point?
How wide is sidewalk on? What is the street on the left?
Hayne and Pickney both are 6 feet wide, and then Meeting Street is 11.
All right, thank you so much for the presentation. We'll take public comment at this time. All right, none for this one. City staff comments and recommendations.
The existing building is a postmodern design dating from 1991 and therefore is not considered historic. Staff appreciate the thorough package provided by the applicant detailing the history of the property and their desire to honor that knowledge and how they propose to alter the existing building. The applicant's desire to open up the base of the building is a reasonable one and will support a livelier public realm on the block, as the current base is fortress-like in the urban experience. Thus, staff support the desire to alter the base with more openings. This takes the form of the introduction of columns at the main entrance that match the pattern and spacing above, but keeps the, it should say rustication, who knows what autocorrect was trying to do there? That clearly demarcates the distinction between the base and the middle of the structure and honors the postmodern origin of the existing structure. Staff also support the introduction of new storefront systems to open base throughout as well. Staff do not support the chamfered corners on Meeting Street and prefer the design hold a strong corner as shown on sheet 24, image 4. The strong solid corners are a defining characteristic of both the previous historic and existing building, as well as the structures in the immediate context. Chamfering the corner erodes the defining characteristics as demonstrated most clearly in the 3D drawings, and we know the sheets that those show on. Staff support the changes to the mountain patterns, which have been thoroughly studied, in the middle and top of the structure. Staff conditions for approval are to replace chamfered corners with strong Cartesian corners as shown in image 4 on sheet 24. And staff recommendation is conceptual approval with board and staff conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, any further comments based on the comments you just received?
No, other than.
If you don't mind stepping up, thanks.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Other than I had met with the Historic Charleston Preservation Society in Benson Borough and all were supportive of the project, and I failed to mention that.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move into board discussion then.
Well, I have to say the chamfers versus the Cartesian sounds like the worst basketball game ever. I think I actually find the chamfer corners okay on this building because we're not talking about defining characteristics of a historic building. And there is a fair amount of precedent for corner entry storefronts in Charleston, maybe not right in this zone, but throughout the city. And you preserved such a hefty pilaster there that the mass still seems held to me. But other than that, I'm comfortable with the proposal and staff recommendation.
I have the same feeling. Reason why I ask about the sidewalk was, now this whole floor becomes a retail, so more people will be walking. and cutting through a corner will be much more comfortable. The only thing, the corner support is so heavy, and I guess it has to be, but maybe it should not be rusticated, same as the bases under the columns in the middle. So they, if it's not rusticated, it's kind of mimics more of the original building, which it was, there was a basis under each column. So, and it depicts a little bit more that center and verticality of it. Even so, we have a base, defined base, but it's still, and I don't know, curved versus trapezoidal or whatever, probably would be interesting. Again, this is kind of modern of a lifetime building, so curve would be fun. It's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board?
You know, and same time, I'm sorry.
Yep. Just when we thought you were done.
Yeah, I thought, you did mention that you were looking at that corner to present, I mean, to mimic here, the top, how it's.
Yes, yeah.
And I think it will be actually nicer in that corner. So it's not so edged.
Luda, are you talking, excuse me, are you talking about the actual corner on the first floor, that column,
Yeah.
the storefront?
No, the column. I thought you mentioned that, or maybe I misunderstood you, but how corner turns is a, you know, double pilasters, so it works out.
I don't think I can do that. It's got one big concrete column behind it.
Yeah, well, it can be on the plan, you going out even more.
We could articulate it differently.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or discussion from the board?
Yeah, I'll share that. I think you did an excellent job of re-engaging the streetscape, and that's what you want to see in Charleston, and it's nicely reflected on that block in particular, where it's so limiting with the one retail outlet being inside the porticos. I'm 50-50 on the chamfered corner. I like the curve of it. It's reflective of the curve in the column or the colonnade along Meeting Street. But I think overall this is a nice project.
Thank you.
I don't have anything back.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. At this time, I'll take a motion if anybody's willing to make one.
Yeah, I'll introduce one. I'll make a motion for conceptual approval, including the chamfers with staff and board comment.
Great, thank you, Mr. White. So it's conceptual approval, including the chamfered corners with board staff comments. Right, do I have a second? Ms. Sobchak, seconds. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. Metters? Ms. Sobchak?
Yeah, in favor.
Chuk, excuse me. Mr. White?
Yeah, in favor.
I'm also yay in favor. Thank you. All right, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we are now moving to item number 5.
We'll let the applicant in
Yes.
the other rooms, we'll let them get.
Oh,
Let them
thank you.
switch out.
PD, didn't we, in the last year or two, create or approve some type of chamfer corner at Meeting and Martin Buffet on both of those corners? Didn't it come through and,
No, it might, I don't recall that, so it might predate me.
you know, there
On Dawson Place.
Dawson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was,
We didn't, the only thing we approved during my time was the rooftop stuff,
okay.
so.
So it may have been before the.
No, I think that goes back.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it,
The meeting and
because
teacher
I
side.
appreciate your comment, but, yeah, I think that's.
All right, great. Well, welcome. Thank you all. We're at item number 5, 657 King Street.
So 657 King Street is in the Old and Historic District, and they are requesting conceptual approval of a new hotel. This is new construction. And we'll give you the location. Here we are, right next to King Street in the crosstown, and we're ready for applicant presentation.
Good evening. My name is Colin Colbert. I'm with CKC Properties, the development team for the project. You guys have seen a project that came through before with a different development group for the site. Similar concept in that it was a hotel. And I wanted to give a little overview of how we got to the point where we're at now tonight. When we initially started designing this project, our biggest hurdle was finding a way to park the site. And although the massing of the structure didn't change much from our initial design, the comments we got when meeting with the stakeholders such as the Canberra Borough Neighborhood Association and others was that they really wished we could engage King Street in a better manner because we were forced to have a pull in on King and a pull out on King with parking taking up the majority of the ground floor footprint. Over the last 6 to 8 months, we've successfully negotiated a lease with the SCDOT to house our parking under the adjacent overpass, which has allowed us to activate the ground floor, which brings some businesses that the neighborhood was happy to have to serve their community, but also allows us to create a more in keeping aesthetic with the rest of the Upper King Street district. Additionally, we took a different approach to the massing of this project. As you'll see in our submittal, we have a central single-story element that provides a roof deck for our guests to utilize between 2 4-story towers that flank it, with our goal being to reduce the massing on King Street before we step it back to the 6-story zoning on the rear of the site. From an aesthetic standpoint, our color palette was to try to create something traditional and timeless. We're proposing using a Meridian gray, Savannah gray brick that has some contrast with a new Ashbury brick, which is actually the body color of a Savannah gray, to create kind of a muted contrast that we think provides a really nice color palette for the building. Additionally, you'll see a lot of wrought iron on the building. Wrought iron canopies, balconies, a wrought iron terrace, and that would all be in a patina green as well as the aluminum clad windows. The ground floor commercial space is surrounded with an off-white cat stone. And I'll let Ashley go into the details of the project, but I'm here for any questions regarding the program or our thought process on the hotel.
Great, thank you so much.
I'm Ashley Jennings, architect on the project, and of course, y'all are pretty familiar with the site for those of you that saw the previous application. This is a really unique and odd lot. As you can see, the shape of it, you have an angle on the front, and then the building steps, and then in addition to that, you have a change in the height district mid site as well, which creates a challenge for addressing the building. And also, when you start to look at the context of the building, it's also very unique in that you have a really big mix of scales and generations of buildings. Of course, you have this smaller structure here. This building is just completed construction. You have the overpass on one side. And as you move further down the street, you have this multi-story building on the other side of Shepherd Street. And looking back towards the structure, you have this overpass that kind of obscures one side of the building, but you also have a view from the overpass of the structure as well. So that kind of set up the context for what we're dealing with as far as visibility of the building from a lot of different places. The approach was to follow the height districts. Well, I'll talk about the context first. One of the things we really spent a lot of time doing was walking up and down King Street, looking at detailing. Initially, we were really interested in mid-century detailing and thinking about a more deco style, but as we started to get into the color palette, we started to look at more a more traditional or turn of the century reference. And some of the buildings on King Street that inspired us are here. You also see some wrought iron elements. These are some details of a building we just are is under construction on the corner of St. Philip Street and Cannon Street. And these are some of the detailing, the color detailing references that Colin made previously. And one of the things that we wanted to do was follow the height district and once again to create a terrace in the middle of the structure on the King Street side of the building facing east. This is the ground floor, and what we've been able to do is activate the entire ground floor to use for commercial space. Some of it for lease and some of it supports the hotel itself. As you can see, the building steps away from the property line on every side except for on the King Street side, and that allows us to have some egress and some marshalling area for the restaurant that's going to occupy this top corner here, and a wall that kind of creates some privacy for that pathway all the way around the building. And as we move, this is the ground floor once again. As we move up, now you can see the terrace. So the idea was for the building to wrap around the terrace and create an outdoor space that could be used for events. There's a small pool there. And then there's a cantilever balcony that steps down over King Street as well. And as we move up the floors, you can start to see these are larger apartment style units. With a kitchen, sleeping areas, and living space. And we've added a terrace element off of the collection point, this hallway or pathway that connects all of the units that's outside, and it looks over that one-story element on each of the floors. As you can see, it steps up. Then, as you can see, on the fourth floor, the front tower elements stop, and then you have on the 5th and 6th floor, you have penthouse units. So they're two-story elements, two-story units as well. And this is a roof plan. One of the things we're considering, if we back up a little bit, we had originally decided that these tower elements would be a good corral for mechanical units, but now starting to think about it, we actually want to potentially use part of these terraces as walkout space for these units. So you may see that change a little bit in the next application. And this is the King Street facade. So once again, you see the reference to the wrought iron element here and here. We are showing some horizontal banding, which is hard to see in this drawing, but I'll show it to you in another drawing. The idea being that there's some horizontal banding and vertical pilasters. We've got some brickwork that defines the cornices and that defines this band here. Got wrought iron canopies that cover and protect these doors here. And then we have a cast stone element that groups these larger windows on the front two tower elements. And as you move around the building, this is a weird angle to look at the building because obviously this is where the overpass comes right here. But the idea is this cast stone base wraps until we get to a point, and then we pick up a pilaster system around the back of the building. And you can see here that the detailing begins to simplify as you move towards the back of the building. We're not turning our back on, the intent is not to just bend the wad on the front, but the intent is to make it a simpler building as it moves around to the back of the structure with some brick detailing and banding. And this is the proposed south elevation, and what this is facing Line Street, and there's a small structure here, and then that new structure on the corner of Line and thing is right here as well. And then this is the rear or the west elevation, and this is the elevation that faces mostly what you would see, I guess, from that overpass as you're coming up. This was a detail just to show a little bit in a larger reference what's happening with some of this detailing here. So you can see how the cornice steps out, the banding, the cast stone, the banding in the cast stone base. And we started to pick up some, just to reference to show you what we're thinking about in terms of color palette and detailing. This would be similar to some inspiration images, obviously, but cast stone panel, brick detailing, cantilever balcony, and then the steel cornice that happens up here, the steel pergola that happens at the top of this terrace. And some more brick detailing just to show you this. I know this is conceptual approval, but we really felt like that this building, a lot of what was going to happen on this building was all about the brick detailing. And then these are some images showing what we think the color palette will look like in reality. I know that photorealistic renderings are not my favorite. But I think the idea here is to start to show you how this building, how the banding and detailing starts to show up. And what's missing is the subtlety between the two different colors. But you can start to see the way the building is seen. Some of these are just to describe the building and some of them are actual views. So here, you would actually see this building from the overpass looking at it here. This is really just to describe how that terrace element works. And then of course, unless you're a bird, you're not going to see the building from this perspective as well.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. We've reached kind of the initial 10 minutes. Do you need a little more time?
I don't think I need any more time.
Okay.
I'm just going to scroll through these images just so you can see.
Great, thank you.
Right.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Questions from the board this time? Public comment, please. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's all right. I cut you off probably. Yeah.
On perspectives, there's no windows on the first floor overlooking.
Right, yes. They, I don't know how, but they didn't show up in our render.
But they
they're
are.
intended to be there, yes, we got that.
Okay.
So the elevation drawing is correct. Render is
Yes,
not.
yes.
There's too many perspectives to go above it.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the board at this time? All right, public comment, please.
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Thank you to the applicant for reaching out. The Preservation Society has weighed in on previous proposals for redevelopment of this site, and we've consistently underscored the importance of compatible, well-detailed design, given the visibility from numerous perspectives. Not only will this building be experienced at a pedestrian level on King Street, but from the overpass and travel routes. All elevations of this building will be highly visible, and significant restudy is needed to better address the surrounding context and better reflect BAR principles for new construction. While we appreciate efforts to break up the King Street elevation into separate volumes, the overall massing is boxy and flat and overwhelms the streetscape. The massiveness of the building is exacerbated by the underscaled fenestration that results in large expanses of blank wall space, as well as the height of the main body of the building. At 6 stories tall, this building would tower over adjacent historic buildings on King Street, and even the large-scale office building on the other side of the overpass is only 5 stories tall. We encourage the board to use its authority to require a downward adjustment of 1/2 story for a more sensitive relationship with the immediate context. And lastly, the BAR principles encourage gracious, glassy ground floors and specifically encourage a minimum floor-to-floor height of 14 feet for non-residential buildings. And at just 12 feet 8 inches, the proposed storefronts do appear compressed, shallow, and uninviting with no clear announcement of a primary entrance. So here and across the building, we think that greater articulation depth and higher quality details should be studied for a more authentic and compatible design. We would note, though, that the removal of the garage access does create a more positive pedestrian experience. Given the level of restudy needed, we recommend denial of this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anita Nestor, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for the conceptual approval of the new hotel at 657 King, and we appreciate the applicant reaching out. We believe the general architectural direction is reasonable and the design inspiration is appropriate, but would like to see the improvements in the design based on the Board of Architectural Review principles for new construction and renovations and repairs. The principles state that a building should have a high-quality tactile and visual experience, and that new construction should work in harmony with the surrounding buildings, and the architectural language of the building should be legible. We feel the building partially failed to meet this principle. We recommend enlarging the windows on the south and west elevations, as well as a restudy of the 5th and 6th floor fenestration on the King Street elevation, eliminating or moving the pool that is currently situated 1 story above King Street, enlarging the cornice of the 4th floor to clearly define that level of the building, and better defining the pilasters and string floors. We're supportive of the 1st floor design, the central negative massing, parapets that screen the building mechanical systems and the materials. We respectfully recommend denial of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Right. City staff, comments and recommendations, please.
Sure. Staff support the initial development of the King Street elevation and its associated massing, which help break down the scale of the building and provide a supportive relationship to the context. The proposal sits on a site next to the crosstown, which makes the building visible in the round. All facades should receive the same amount of design and articulation as the King Street elevation, as they are all highly visible. Given that visibility, staff recommend continuing the cast stone base present on King Street around the entire building, both in terms of height as well as rusticated design. In addition, the language of the vertical windows with cast stone spandrels on the King Street facade should inform the other facades, as well as to elevate the articulation of those facades, which appear quite horizontal and flat. Staff support the height and scale of the proposal, but the mass of the building appears quite boxy, particularly from the north and west sides, which are highly visible from across town. Staff recommend continued study of parapets and facade articulation to break down the perception of the mass. Staff condition for approval. If approved by the board, staff require a restudy of the north, south, and west elevations and associated massing articulation. Staff recommendation is for deferral for restudy of perception of massing and architectural direction.
Thank you so much. Any response?
I'll go after you.
Okay. So I really appreciate all the comments. I understand the issue with boxy, it is a box, it's a building. But I think that one of the things we would ask the board to weigh in on tonight is the quality of materials. That seems to come up a lot here, and I feel like we're, at least in this section of town, we're looking at a palette that would be certainly representative of the palette that would be acceptable in this part of the city. As I said earlier, the immediate context here is a lot of different styles and types of buildings. There's some wood frame structures, there's some brick structures. And I think what we're referencing, because of the scale that's allowed for the site, the size of the site, we're looking to other parts of the city for cues for detailing for larger scale buildings, because you don't have that right here in this immediate area, other than the contemporary building that's on the north side of Shepherd Street. So in your deliberation today, what I would ask is that if there is a consideration for larger fenestration, grouped fenestration, that we get some feedback on the idea that this building can't 100% relate to those in an immediate context because of the scale of the building. And how do we address that? Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to tack on a couple things. I think it's important to remember that the previous application for this was approved as a 5-story structure across the entirety of the site. We thought that our approach was a good approach to break down the massing by showing smaller structures on King Street and stepping it up as we went back. I don't think playing with the parapet is a good idea. I think it's gonna create strange architectural detailing. And I guess in regards to the cast stone wrapping the entirety of the building, I encourage the board to remember that this overpass is gonna block that entire facade around it. And then on the rear of the structure, if you guys were here for your previous meeting last month, there is a project approved for 4 3.5-story structures that will abut the rear west facade of this building, making that detailing invisible to anyone except for the guests staying at the homes behind it. So just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's move into the board discussion, please. Sorry. Great, thank you, Mr. Mudders.
Number one, it's a tough site, no question about that. When I reviewed this for this meeting, I looked at your context photos, and again, most of those context photos are some of my favorite buildings. I don't see those context photos in your drawing though, in your detailing, and I see you use those as context photos, but I can't figure out how and where. How you address this project moving forward, that's up to you, right? Not us, but I don't see those context photos in that design. Based on this design, I'd be open towards a 1/2-inch reduction in the height of the building.
You mean half story?
Half story.
Yeah.
Half story.
I don't think anybody would oppose the 1/2 inch.
Yeah, I think you're responsible for those views coming across the crosstown. And I mean, that would be the west and the north, and that's gonna be a big deal. It's gonna be hard. I mean, it's a hard site. There's nothing easy about it. The north elevation and west elevations, they aren't very interesting. The height, scale, and mass, it doesn't feel complete to me. It's like there's brick and then there's some fenestrations, but that's it. There's a lot of brick. I know that there could be a feeling of balance, but it's a very, very simple feeling of balance, and it's missing something in the general architectural direction. I find to be, it's bland, it's repetitive, but it's in a repetitive nature that's unlike the context photos. And I think it lacks enough variation as the context photos have. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
I'll jump in and say that I agree with that. And I do think that their architectural direction is not well related to the context or the precedent photos, and you're right, it doesn't show up. And I find the public comment from the Historic Charleston Foundation and Preservation Society be especially helpful tonight, because that articulates a lot of the thoughts that I had about this project. And I do think in order to properly address this proposal on this very difficult site, a denial makes a lot of sense, because it gives clear direction and frames what the applicant does next, and they're not left guessing, well, deferral or what's been deferred exactly.
And yes, it's in support of that, unfortunately. But yes, the site is very difficult, but plan what you come up with is very interesting and very involved. So, but it's not represented by the exterior somehow. And the best thing on the front elevation is those 2 towers. What are they? 4 stories. They kind of they're kind of mimicking the Garrison building, which is probably the most appropriate to as a expiration. The rest of it is so heavy. Top is so heavy. It's even surprising. We had several hotel projects coming through lately, and everybody were trying to address the top story to help with the mass, to help with the height. And this one is just straight up, and the glazing is very important in hotel, so, and we don't have enough of that anywhere. All that said, all the staff comments, public comments, I would support denial at this point.
Thank you. Yeah, from my perspective, the overall mass is very boxy and is a problem for me as well. I do think that the fenestration ought to be looked at stronger as well. Appreciate the comments from Preservation Society and HCF on those, but generally agree with the board. Any other comments or discussion?
I just have a question. The parapet, is that the tall parapet over the roof to hide the HVACs? And they cannot move inside the big building and lower it. I don't know, just that point, because it's so much. Okay.
Anything else from the board?
I don't think I need to add.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion if somebody's willing.
Well, I'm jotting some things down and I
Yeah.
feel like, whenever we make whenever someone introduces a motion for denial, it needs to be pretty clear and specific, just not only for the record, but just so you don't know what to do next. So it felt.
Yeah, let's take a few minutes and I'll take that once you get it together. Thank you.
White is writing an epic novel.
Well, I write slowly, but I also I've got like 4 sentences here that I'm trying to blend. All right. Okay, here we go. I'll introduce a motion for denial of height, mass, scale, and architectural direction. Specifically noting board comments regarding inelegant massing, insufficient fenestration, poor scale, plain architectural direction, and including direction to reduce height by 1/2 story. Motion also includes staff comment. Want me to reread that?
Yes, if you would. Did everybody get that? Let's read it one more time.
All right, denial of height, mass, scale, and architectural direction, specifically noting board comments regarding inelegant massing, insufficient fenestration, poor scale, plain architectural direction, and including direction to reduce height by 1/2 story. Motion also includes staff comments.
I'll second the motion. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yeah, in favor.
Matters?
Yeah, in favor.
Ms. Sochuk?
Yeah, in favor.
Mr. White?
Yay in favor.
I'm also yea in favor. All right, well, that concludes this meeting. Thank you all the applicants and everybody being here. Well,
I have that.
You can read it.
Okay, just to make sure that.
Did I get-
Official meeting